So what if the biggest influence on your customer experience isn't actually your app, your brand, or your staff, but the physical space itself? Now, in destinations where experience is the product, places like cultural districts, museums, retail villages, architecture isn't background. Architecture is actually strategy. It shapes behaviour, emotion, and memory long before any service has actually been delivered. Now, in this episode of CXD, we explore how space becomes story and why architects should be at the CX table from day one. I'm Oliver King, Managing Partner at Engine, and this is CXD, where we explore the art and science of reimagining customer experiences. Today I'm joined by Guy Hollaway, a multi-award-winning architect and founder of Hollaway Studio. Now, for over 2 decades, Guy has been reimagining the built environment, from one-off commissions to large-scale regenerations projects. His work has earned 7 RIBA awards and has been featured in everything from Wired to the New York Times. Guy, welcome to the show. How are you? What's going on? You just told me it was your birthday yesterday, so happy birthday too.
Thank you very much. Happy to be 1 year older and just as enthusiastic every day.
So, Guy, I guess the big opening question is this. So, what's the difference between a place that's, a destination, like some of those things that you've created, the surf lagoon, the skate parks, etc., and a regular place? And I suppose what this means is, what's the difference between a place where people kind of have to go or just sort of incidentally pass through, and places where people want to return to? As an architect, what's that for you?
I think we find ourselves getting more and more involved in what we would call building invention, which is quite broad, but we are constantly trying to rethink how something is done or how something is created. What is the new? How do we make something that is going to invigorate the senses, create moments, make people interact, be part of, create a community? How do we grow, fertilize? How do we get under the skin of a place that creates a new place? And all of those things are quite difficult to achieve. And we find ourselves more and more inventing a new way of thinking and a new way of creating the built environment through landscape and architecture that can unlock a place. And I love nothing more than working in somewhere which is pretty run down, that needs regeneration and requires the new, because doors and people seem to open much quicker and easier, and the values can be lower, but you can create value in a place. And those are the most transformational projects we've ever done because they really make a difference.
You mentioned a new way. So could you just capture for me what the difference is between perhaps a traditional way of approaching a design problem like that, and this new way that you're developing?
So if I could give you an example, which
Yeah.
would be F51, which is the world's first multi-story skate park. It's never been done before. It was a kind of, I suppose, an accident of different consequences of a conversation with a very informed client. So Roger Dahan, who is a billionaire, and he is trying to reimagine the town, and he phoned me up and he said, "Guy, look, I'm thinking about buying this part of Folkestone, which sits on the southeast of the coast of England, and what should I do with it?" And I said, "Well, I think you should knock it all down." And he said, "Well, yeah, of course, we've got to knock it down and start again." And he said, I said, "Well, what should we do?" And he said, "Well, look, we're redeveloping the seafront. People need a places to park. Why don't you design a multi-story car park?" And I said, yeah, okay, I can look at that. So I designed this car park, showed it to him, and he said, "Oh, Guy, this is a bit boring." And I said, "Yeah, it's a multi-story car park." And he said, "Oh, well, look, on the seafront, there's a skate park there. We're going to have to move it to, part of our regeneration plan. Why don't you think about how you could integrate that?" So I went off, researched skate, just got super big dive into it, LA, where it all originated from, everything. And I designed this skate park on the roof of the car park. And I showed it to him, and he said, "Wow, that's really interesting. But these cars are really boring." And I said, "Yeah, they're really boring. Let's get rid of them." And this idea of a multi-story skate park was born in the town centre, which is extraordinary. It's really turning its head. And Ollie Wainwright, who's a journalist for The Guardian, architectural critic, wrote, well, he likened this moment to the when the uh, smartphone first came out. It changed how people thought, and he likened that to moving skate into town centres, putting it in the heart of a community, and saying, "Young people, you're really important. You're the most important people of this town. You are the future of this town, and how do we make you feel special and part of this town?" And this skate park is rewarding those young people and giving back to them, who will in time hopefully stay with that community and give back and reward the community that is given to them.
And that seems really unusual that came about. It seems through sort of like conversation and a creative exploration that you would you put pen to paper and begin to design what the car park would look like, and then through conversation with the client, just both of you erode that idea away and bring into it this idea of the skate park.
Took about 6 months of toing and froing, but a lot of fun and a very enlightened client. And don't get me wrong, it was a client with some deep pockets who was prepared to spend 17 million on this building, but was super into it. And so it was about e- exciting the client, but then it was about a conversation which grew into a real project, and which is now there. I was there this week, and it's thriving, and the community is benefiting from that, and that is amazing.
So talking about F51, the people that go there must, I mean, must love it, and it's a classic destination. They must go there time and time again, and they must always feel a particular way when they're there, and it's as if that thinking of this space, it 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 it's imprinting emotionally on people. Architecture is kind of doing this emotional work often silently. But I wonder how do you do that in the creative process? How's that emotion sort of explored and delivered? You mentioned kind of doing a deep dive into the scene in LA and that kind of thing, but how do you bring that back into the project?
So I think there are different levels. So there is understanding the community that you're in. So that's engaging with all the young people that are in that community and what they want and need. So and understanding your role in that. So I understood that in their eyes, I'm not cool, and so um, we had to bring in some pretty cool people that we knew that we could work with, that were going to make the building something that they wanted to be part of, and was the perception of that was going to be cool at the end of it. Yeah.
Do you mean people to co-create with, or do you mean like cool young architects? What do you mean the cool people?
Not young architects. I mean, no, no, no. Skate designers, brand designers, artists. Uh, we because the skate world connects with music, fashion, art, multimedia, everything. Yeah. So there's a certain vibe attached to that. So not trying to pretend that you could do that, but bringing those people in that could connect was super important. But then also understanding what the international scene was as well. So we researched Dogtown and when the origins of skate, and there was a host pipe ban in LA and all the swimming pools were empty. So these kids were just knocking around and then they just started bowl skating. So what we did was to look at that original swimming pool bowl and recreate that here in the UK. So if you were a kid in the UK, you could skate at an LA bowl, another level. And then that bowl was up in the air and you could walk underneath it, and it's the deepest bowl in the country. It's 3.2 meters. And so we wanted to create a building that could entertain or challenge the best skaters in the world for competition and traveling to the UK, but also the just the local community. And so you could learn how to skate. And if you created those facilities, and I'm really proud to say there's a young lad in who never skated before F51, and now he's in the GB team, which is just extraordinary. That progression and what this building has managed to give.
And were there designing this with all these collaborators? Was there a sort of a target, almost emotion that you were trying to evoke in the people that were going there?
Ownership.
Ownership.
It's so important that they were part of the journey and part of that excitement through the construction, which we built through COVID as well. That was pretty difficult. But you're building that anticipation, you're creating that ownership. We put out on socials for mural artwork to go into the building, and we had 120 young local people come back. It was the response was incredible, and they were all creating these designs. We could only select 12, which went into the park, which are pretty awesome. But what we actually ended up doing was taking all 120 and putting those onto skateboard decks and then decorating the whole cafe with them. And so they were all complete. And that's just ownership. And it's understand, I go there now and I speak to young people, and they're telling me back the stories that we uncovered and created and co-created. So, and which is they understand. And that narrative and story creates a place and creates that sense of identity and ownership.
I was just going to ask you about that, about the narratives. So how does that play out in someone's kind of visit to F51?
I think any good building needs to do this. So we're all human and different, and you can interact with a building on a fairly surface level. You can, it's got a function to it. You can, but then you could, if you wanted to, you can completely deep dive, and you need to make that dive accessible and legible without being too obvious about it, so that we can uncover those stories. That those stories could be about the client. And when I say client, I don't mean the person paying for it. I mean the person using it. That is the client.
Does that sort of become manifest in the building? So I understand, for example, with the murals and that kind of thing, there's a lot of narrative and story coming out there. But does it also come out through decisions about volumes of spaces, materials used, facilities in the space?
So when you go into the building, you are underneath these concrete bowls. They are sitting like heavy bellies above your head. and you can sense the weight of those, and you kind of understanding what they are, but not understanding what they are. And it's not really until you go up onto the bowl floor that it all starts to click into place and make sense. The the architecture needs to start to reveal itself, excite you, build anticipation, but not give itself completely away.
Yeah, to draw you through, to discover, to have those light bulb moments. So, thinking about now some of the other incredible buildings you've created, whether it's the lagoons, the galleries, the wineries, etc. You mentioned before about creating these moments, and I wonder, this idea sort of architecturally of creating these signature moments or maybe places or backdrops within a building, is that you know is that given a great deal of consideration, or do these things sort of come out naturally? We know people now, they share an enormous amount on social media about things, the perfect whatever. Is that creating those signature moments for those places, is that part of the brief?
I liken it to creating a film. So you're you're if you're sitting there watching a film, the film director is directing you through a narrative. Um, you're being guided through, and you can see as much or as little or interpret into that depending on what you're watching, obviously. Uh, I see good architecture as a navigational tool through the experience in a way that enables people to engage with the building. And I want the gasping moment or that plunging feeling. I think you can play with your sensory perception. And so, if I give you an example, we designed a restaurant in the sea, in the harbour in Folkestone called Rock Salt.
In the sea? What do you mean in this? What do you mean, like floating restaurant or?
No, it sits in the harbour in the sea. We claimed some land back from the sea to by accident. Um,
To explain yourself now by accident.
oh no! So originally it was a bridge in the corner, and I did a public consultation and I met some of the locals, and this local guy said, "You do realise if there's a neap tide and the wind's in a certain direction, it's like being in a bath. You know when you move backwards and forwards in the bath and the sea goes through." And he said, all the sea goes to that corner where your restaurant is, and it explodes like a geyser in the corner. Uh, and I looked in there, I thought, oh my God. He showed me this photograph. I said, oh my God, it's going to go off like a bomb under the building. It's not going to be there. And so we 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 ended up having to actually create a sea wall and build the building in the sea, which is a fairly complicated thing to do. But we gained a wine cellar and a store and everything underneath. So, but that building is very closed down to the street, like a fish, it's timber and it's closed down to the street, but it's curving and it leads you into the entrance, and it's designed purposely very, very narrow and almost dark, and you can see into the kitchen. The kitchen says fresh fish and everything else, but it's a very narrowing experience. And then suddenly you go through the door and poof, and the whole building curves into the harbour, and it's this huge glass wall, and you take in the view, and it's really building that anticipation, that sense of drama in that place. And I think architecture can surprise and delight, but you need to sort of take them on that journey through that experience to get to that place, and it's building that anticipation.
But you can imagine like stepping out, as you say, going to that narrow space and then stepping out. That's going to imprint on people. They're not going to forget that. They're going to remember that for sure. So one of the things that so Engine, as experienced designers, when you're looking at services and experiences, they are often delivered through lots of different channels. So there's technology in there, there's people, there's processes, operations, etc., etc. Often a lot of time is put into defining a clear kind of vision for that future experience. So the clients of the space, what experience do we want them to be having? Does that play out in architecture?
I will definitely pull a client, take them on a journey. I find that written briefs can work quite well, but if you interpret those into drawings, and I will draw in front of a client and just to take them on that experience and try and draw out of them where something could go. More often than not, you find that the clients are incredibly receptive to that as an idea. When we were working with you guys with Eurotunnel, the shuttle, you had done so much of the prep work for us, and you had looked and worked with the client and identified the need. You had identified the demographic of the their customer and what the customer experience might be, and all of those things had gone into the CEO's minds and everything else. So by the time I came along, and I was literally in a huge board meeting with the bosses of Eurotunnel. I don't think I'll ever go back to a boardroom that big again. But I had a massive piece of tracing paper and I was sketching out, and they were saying, "Wow, nobody's ever done this with us before. You're literally solving our problems in front of us." And I was drawing this thing, which, by the way, I rehearsed quite a bit before but sort of made it. But they got super excited and super engaged. But I asked them, would they have got so super excited and engaged if they hadn't had that prep before to understand the need and why they needed this and the direction of all of that? So the more you're prepared, the better the outcome. And we see it over and over again. The best projects we do have the most amount of thinking up front.
Yeah, it's like that thing they say: if you have an hour to chop down a tree, you sort of spend 50 minutes sharpening your axe, don't you?
It's so true. You need to really think your way through this, and we will, if the client is racing to something, we will just try and bring them back and just say, well, look, come on, let's ask ourselves the big questions here.
Maybe talking of some of the work that we do, that the sort of um, the horizon of the work that's being done is often 5-10 years, what have you. That's it's expected, and sometimes people we're working with, that they don't expect to still be in that business in that time frame. So they're sort of working a little bit sort of over their event horizon, so to speak. But with a building, as you've been saying, you are designing something that is going to be standing for upwards 50, 60, 70, 80 years. Almost the responsibility that the commissioning clients have towards that, they have to be thinking beyond their needs and the part this building is going to be playing in a future that they don't yet know, and to get them to buy into that is incredible.
We find that more often than not, we're pushing an open door when we start to explain how the investment that you put into the building now will save you on your energy bills. It will save you on your maintenance. This product will last to this lifespan. You just need to spend that time with your client. I had the most amazing luxury of this time last year. I was in Nepal with an amazing client, Perna, who's Nepalese, lives in the UK, wants to build a destination hotel for wellness on the side of the mountain, looking at the Annapurna mountain range in the Himalayas. I mean, what a brief. And I spent with him 2 weeks in Nepal, trekking, whitewater rafting, just getting to know each other, doing all the experiences that the client would be doing. Spent 2 weeks on the site, 2 days with him on the actual site. And trust me, it doesn't always happen like this, but because I spent all of that time with him and just chatting about his aspirations, his dreams, what he wants to create, the whole project and the essence of it, and it took him quite a while to come up with a name, which is Panyana, which means breathe. But just the whole perception of it, and his centering and his own center of gravity to the project. Anyways, second day, we were standing on the site looking at the Annapurna mountain range. He set up this whole table, and we had people helping us, with our bags, and they prepared lunch on the side of this mountain, and I had my tracing paper out, and I just started drawing. It's magical. And that sketch that I did on that side of that mountain manifested itself into that design because I had that luxury of spending that time. And literally, I am like this conduit of this drawing, which he's just going, wow, this is what I want. And then that is all developed into CGIs, and we're now on site. And within a year, and he's so enthusiastic, and he's building the roads and starting to do the formation, and planning's a bit different in Nepal, by the way. So
Sounds like it.
yeah, it's a little bit easier. But to create and to go on that journey with him, and whether that journey it's constant, is an extraordinary experience. That's a proper destination, by the way. I mean, that is just really. I think it's going to take us 4 or 5 years to actually realize that. Yeah. I think the actual build process is going to be slower. Building on the side of a
Yeah,
mountain is not easy. When you have to build a road to get to it. And it all their rain falls in 2 months, so we have to store the rain on the site. So there's loads of challenges that come with that. If it's going to be an extraordinary place, which is about meditation, which is about connecting to the mountain, and it's about really escapism.
that's incredible. That's going to be incredible to see that come to life. Guy, could talk about this forever. This is absolutely fascinating. Gonna try and draw this episode to a close, but I think I want you back to talk about more stuff. I was just wondering, like looking ahead, what what excites you most about the next decade of designing architecture, designing places, designing destinations, experiences? What do you think's going to be happening?
uh, we are moving, or there's the cotton wool generation of us being very protective over our children and everything else. And I think there is a move towards recreational pursuits, which are safe, but are testing individuals. Maybe that's skate or climbing. I think that is all tied into um, health and well-being, because as we live longer, we need to live more healthily. And my role as an architect is to understand human nature and where we might go, and how that will affect us in the future. Because if I can design buildings and places and destinations that will reinvent how we think or what the future might be, then those buildings will and places will stand the test of time and be successful and be the leaders of that changing societal movements of where we want to be. Suits and activities that are about bringing people together in and those connections.
Guy, this is fantastic. I have lots of other questions. I'm going to follow up with you. I want to get you back to talk about more of this stuff. I want to, hear how these projects develop. In the description of the podcast, we're going to put lots of links for everybody. Links to Hollaway Studio, the work you're doing. We're also going to share some points of view and some tools around designing destinations and resources to just help people apply more of this thinking to the projects that they're doing. So Guy, thank you so much. It's been great having you on the show.
No, thank you for having me. Cheers.
Brilliant. Thank you, Guy. See you soon. And to everybody else, if you like this episode, please share it with your friends and tune in again on CXD, where we're going to explore more about the art and science of designing great customer experiences. All the best. Thank you.